Hey everyone, so this video is about the book Nudge by Richard Thaler. If you're interested in the book, there's a link down below. So this book is all about how our decisions are being influenced by something called a nudge, hence the name of the book. And a nudge is basically a psychological tactic that's being used on us to get us to think a certain way or get us to do a certain thing. And basically, there are a list of these psychological tactics or cognitive biases, but this book only really goes into some of them. An example is availability, another is optimism and overconfidence, another is gains and losses, and the last one is the status quo bias. Now, there are more than just what I've said, but those are just some of what it talks about. Now, this book has a lot of great ideas on how our decisions are being influenced on money, health, and happiness, just as the book title says. Now, there are great points, but here are my 3 takeaways from this book. So the first takeaway is that there's something called the anchoring bias. Now, the anchoring bias is basically we make our decisions based off of a starting point, and that's hence the name anchoring bias. So we start off with something, and then from there we kind of base our next decisions. And it says here on page 24 in the book, anchors can even influence how you think your life is going. In one experiment, college students were asked 2 questions. A, how happy are you? B, how often are you dating? When the 2 questions were asked in this order, the correlation between the 2 questions was quite low, 0.11. But when the question order was reversed, so that the dating question was asked first, the correlation jumped to 0.62. Apparently, when prompted by the dating question, the students use what might be called the dating heuristic to answer the question about how happy they are. Gee, I can't remember when I last had a date. I must be miserable. Similar results can be obtained from married couples if the dating question is replaced by a love-making question. So there you have it. That's how the anchoring bias works. It's basically with a flip of a question that can influence your emotions and your feelings. So just how they make one question first, it can influence your entire decision making. Now, the second point is that humans are really risk adverse. In fact, we need a 2-to-1 payoff in order for us to even try to take a risk. And it says here in this book on page 34, and it starts off by saying, suppose I ask you whether you want to make a bet. Heads, you win X dollars. Tails, you lose $100. How much does X have to be for you to take the bet? For most people, the answer to this question is somewhere around $200. This implies that the prospect of winning $200 just offsets the prospect of losing $100. So there you go. We don't like losses at all. We would have to get a lot more to get if we're going to take that risk of losing something. So that was point number 2, that we are risk averse. So the third point is that we don't care as much as you think we do. So basically, I'm sure a lot of people feel somewhat self-conscious about the fact that, oh, everyone's looking at me, oh, everyone's going to notice this or that, but that's actually not the case. And what happened was there was research done, and they found out that people aren't looking as much as you think that they are, and that's called the spotlight effect. And it says here on page 62 of the book, Tom Gilovich and his colleagues have demonstrated that people fall prey to what he calls the spotlight effect. In a typical experiment, Gilovich's team started by doing some research about which entertainer would be most unhip to display on the front of a t-shirt. This research was conducted in the late 1990s, and the winner of this dubious honor was the singer Barry Manilow. When a student arrived for the experiment, he was told to put on a t-shirt with Barry Manilow's picture prominently displayed on the front. The student was then asked to join another group of students who were busy filling out questionnaires. After a minute or so, the experimenter returned and told the student wearing the t-shirt that he now realized he wanted him to participate in a different study. The student and the experimenter then left the room. At this point, the student was asked to guess how many of the other students in the room would be able to identify who was on his t-shirt. The average guess was a bit less than half, 46%. In fact, only 21% of the group could say who was pictured on his t-shirt. So basically, no one cares as much as you think. And it's kind of good to know that if I'm feeling self-conscious, or maybe you yourself are feeling self-conscious, people aren't going to notice as much as you think they do. So that was point number 3. Now, in terms of who this book is for, I would say that if you are someone who's interested in the human cognitive biases, or how we're making decisions, or how we're being influenced in making decisions, or just anything on human behavior, then definitely check out this book. It has a great section on how our decisions are being influenced, or how you can even use these sort of tactics and influence other people. But if you aren't interested in that, then I don't see any reason why you'd want to read this book then. As for the rating, I would probably give this book a 3.5 out of 5. The reason for that is that a lot of this stuff applies to Americans. Now, for myself, I'm not American, so a lot of these things that Richard Thaler talks about, it applies to Americans, and I couldn't really connect with that, or I couldn't really understand completely what he was referring to or talking about. But he does talk about how they're being, or these psychological influences or these nudges are being used in certain ways, or how they could be used in certain ways to make better decisions about, again, money, happiness, and health. But for myself, I found the first part of the book where it just talks about these nudges and how these psychological biases are used. I thought that part was the best and most applicable for myself. So that's why I'm only giving this book a 3.5 out of 5. Alright, well, thank you for watching, and if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. But if you didn't, then give it a thumbs down and leave a comment below on why you didn't like this video, so that way I can make it better for you. Alright, and if you are interested in receiving notifications of my future videos, then hit that subscribe button down below. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye for now.